Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by hunky, hairy, huggable homos who love film. Try saying that 10 times fast. Bet you can. To discuss film news and review movies. As usual, and I wouldn't have it any other way, this week I'm joined by my delightful co-hosts. Jim Pugliafico, welcome.
Thank you, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here as well. Welcome, Will.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Brad, Jim, movie fans. Glad to be here with you all.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're glad you're enjoying it, Will, because this is your last show on the Movie Bears podcast, so I hope you have a good time.
Yes, this should be a fun... Wait, what?
No, I'm just teasing.
Wow, that's a shitty tease.
Look, 8 people logged off at that.
I know.
Oh, right. People are. What are you going to do with all those Team Will T-shirts now?
Start his own podcast, obviously.
Wear them shamelessly.
Garden Gnome Reviews.
The Will the Weightlifter podcast.
There you go. Will, show us your medal. Let's give you some props.
By the way, Will, I don't want to make I don't know all the particulars, but I know that Will won at least the second place in a powerlifting competition.
Check out his giant medal. You guys don't do anything small in Texas, do you?
Right. That's a Texas-sized medal.
Yeah, we had I've been training for the last 2 months for a lifting competition that was this last weekend, and I placed second in my division, and it was very nice. It was a lot of fun, especially I'm very new to the sport, less than a year in, not doing anything too crazy with it. But that was a really nice shot in the arm to walk away with that.
Will, just for your win, you get a fanfare.
Yeah, Will. The second place ribbon is just a gateway drug to like a room full of powerlifting trophies.
That's right.
That will be the dream. That will be I need a shadow box for like right behind us so I can showcase that nonstop.
You got to get something on those walls.
Yeah, right. It's a little barren.
They're pretty seraplaned and tall right now, so
they are. I need something fun back there. I need to figure out how to do that.
There you go. Well, we have a big show this week. We are reviewing The Witch, the new colonial pilgrim supernatural devil-worshipping witch thriller film that came out over the weekend and has been getting all kinds of discussion. But before we get to that, we're also going to be giving you some of our predictions for the Oscars. The Academy Awards are coming up this weekend, this Sunday, in fact. So all the red carpet gala, if that's your thing, and all the golden statues being handed out. Jim, there's a gold statue behind you.
There is. This is our replica Oscar that is actually a trophy that we throw. As longtime listeners will know, we throw a kind of an Oscar bash here at the house. Just kind of get a couple TVs going, and everybody gathers around, eats food, and plays a little Oscar pool. And the winner gets to win this golden guy here that we call Ollie, not Oscar, because it's not a real Oscar, right? There's
trademark.
Yeah, you don't want to be sued. I think that's fair.
Yeah. So right? So we're excited for that again this year, and I don't know. I've never come close to winning. Brad has won at least twice that I can think of, and I've never really come close to winning because I think I always kind of pick my lineup with my heart as opposed to my head, like. Kind of thinking like the Academy voters or what I think is going to win, and we'll talk through some of that as we go through the categories tonight. But we'll see how I do this year.
You know why it is, Jim?
Why?
It's because you listen to your heart.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I guess the reason I vote with my heart is because that I want to, there are certain films or performances or whatever that I want to see, and so when it's more of an emotional ride for me as opposed to an intellectual ride. Like, oh, I know I can pick the movie that's going to win, even though I may not really care much for that movie, as much for that movie. You know, I guess I like to wear my heart on my sleeve a little bit when it comes to my Oscar picks.
I think that's a very good point because, as you know,
Yep.
part of our conversation today, how we go into the Oscars and how we look at things is going to be a kind of a big part of things. Brad, what's your philosophy?
You know, so here's the thing: the 3 times that I've won our trophy, and after the first time, I had to let other people have the trophy, so we went to the next person down. But the 3 times have always been me going with my what do I think the Academy will pick choices instead of what do I want to pick choices. And last year I thought, well, you know what? I'm getting pretty good at this by now. I got this made. I got it. I bombed it last year, guys. I was one of the worst last year, and I think what it is I overthought the Academy.
Yeah.
I was it's kind of like you do with Survivor sometimes, Will, how much you pre-game and break down the strategy and think about things. That's how I was last year. Mm-hmm. I probably changed my picks 8 times. I psyched myself way out, and I ended up being totally off. So I don't know. This year, the way I'm approaching it is I want to go with my heart a little bit, but I think I'm going to go with my gut instinct in terms of what I think the Academy is going to go for. I'm not going to think it or really strategize too much. I'm just going to be what do I think the Academy will give it? First one to come to mind, that's what I'm going to mark down.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. I do something very similar. I keep this year I did a spreadsheet because I'm a spreadsheet nerd. Last year I did it, I wrote it all out. But and I have 2 columns. I've got a will win and I've got a should win column. And my should win is where I put my heart pick. It could be the thing that's the 5th place in the category, the one that's not going to get a single Academy vote, but my heart really yells out to you. But the one that
column is what you think should win.
Yeah, that's my personal pick. But the one that I use as my vote is my will win, my prediction column. And Brad, you're absolutely right. I think it's definitely using the getting inside the heads of the not only of the voters, but also films kind of have a momentum. There's the award season kind of runs like a sports season. Sometimes a team can go in really hot into the Super Bowl playoffs or the NFL playoffs. And they've got this wave of momentum, and it carries them all the way to the Super Bowl. And that happens here, too. And you can watch how films do in the Directors Guild and the Producers Guild. So you can watch all of that stuff, use it to inform your decisions, but you're absolutely right, Brad. What kills you is when you start changing it back and forth and back and forth. I had a really good run last year, so I'm going to try to just mimic what I did last year and hope it works out as well this year. So, and in doing so, I probably overthought things.
Yeah, I mean, the Oscars are they're akin to, they're like the gay Super Bowl, right? I mean, or gay fantasy football.
Well, there's also the Tonys, but
yeah, the Tonys, that's true. But I think the Oscars get a little bit more attention. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But the problem with picking with your heart is that every year, if you pick with your heart, you lose more and more respect or I don't know what the word is for the whole process of the Oscars, right? You kind of end up seeing it for what it is, which is, there's a lot of marketing going on by the studios and advocating for certain movies, and it's a little disheartening because you put your heart behind what you think should win, and granted that can't happen all the time, but then you see some things win and it's just I don't know, kind of like the fix is in kind of thing, and it definitely makes me lose respect, I think, for the Oscars as a thing.
It's less for me. It's less of a fixes in type thing, and more of a. You're absolutely right. I think when you said it's as a marketing thing, absolutely. I think that's kind of the way I would view it more. As with any awards thing, whether it be Oscars, Tonys, Emmys, Golden Globes, whatever, every group has its own guidelines, own rules, and not even formal the rule book rules, but I'm talking about the informal things, the things that kind of guide what gets voted on, and because of what the makeup of the team is. And a lot of it from the Oscars, the reason you start to see kind of this homogenous Oscar look for a film is the way you become a member of the Oscar voting committee is by winning an Oscar, right? So let's say you're a guy who absolutely loves smash cuts in films, like that's your thing, and you put those into a movie and you win the Oscar for Best Picture with all the smash cuts, right? So now you're a voting member. Next year, another dude comes up with does a bunch of smash cuts, and because that's already part of your aesthetic, something that you really enjoy, you're probably going to be more likely to vote for him. So now that guy is going to be more likely to win. He's going to be more likely to vote, and so on and so forth. And that's a very simplistic example, but what you end up getting is a system where people tend to vote for the types of things that they create and the types of things that they appreciate, and it creates one look for the Oscars. So I go into the Oscars knowing that it's not always like representative of absolute quality. It's representative of Oscar quality. And going into it with that mindset, I enjoy the process quite a bit. And by and large, even if they're not my absolute favorite films of the year, a lot of the things that are nominated here are still good films. Like, there aren't very many films on this list that I didn't enjoy at all. And if something if something loses Best Picture, the fact that it was still one of like the 8 films nominated, I still feel it's like a pretty hefty feather in the cap.
You get to put it on your CD case, right? So if you're that film, you know what I mean. You get to put nominated for 3 Academy Awards.
That's true.
So that's where the marketing comes in too. So the nominations are a marketing boon also to these films, just to be nominated.
Indeed, indeed. Well, we have quite a few categories to move through. We're just going to hit some of the bigger ones here. I think some of the smaller categories we may skip, but we'll hit the big ones. But let's kind of dive in. Let's start talking about some of these. We'll just kind of basically what we'll do is we'll just move down the line. We'll tell you who's nominated if you're not already aware. Maybe you can get your scorecard out and start making your choices with us. And feel free as we go, listeners, if you're watching us live, leave us a comment on the video. Use the Q&A feature. Let us know what your choices are in these categories, and we may give you a shout-out on the show. But actor in a supporting role, best actor in a supporting role. So we've got Christian Bale from The Big Short, Tom Hardy from The Revenant, Mark Ruffalo from Spotlight, Mark Rylance, is that how you pronounce it, from Bridge of Spies? Yep, and Sly Stallone from Creed. So what do you guys think on this one? Who's the lucky guy?
This one, for me, looks like a pretty easy choice, I think. Although, again, a lot of great performances here. We talked about even Mark Rylance, who I think is really kind of a dark horse in this category. He was kind of the bright spot in Bridge of Spies for me in that movie. But I think this one is going to go to Sylvester Stallone for his performance in Creed. We talked about it on the show. Really an awesome kind of, quote, comeback performance where he really showed people that he's got acting chops when he tones down the, so it's ironic because he's playing a role that he's known for, right? That's his iconic role is Rocky Balboa. Yet he managed to tone the character down in his old age enough to kind of bring us on board and say, hey, there's another dimension to this character that we really like. And I think, credit to Stallone for this. If he does win, I guess it's great. It's a feather in that movie's cap. But it's a little ironic that that for a movie with a black director and a black star in Michael B. Jordan, that the white guy would get the Oscar for this movie. That doesn't mean it's not. It's in my mind, it would be totally deserved. But yeah, I think Stallone's going to get it.
Yeah.
How about you, Will?
And not to be too much of an apologist for all of that, because there are certainly some race issues with the Oscars, and that's a whole separate discussion. But
it is, which we won't get into.
I think the thing that really got Stallone into this category is we're talking supporting actor versus lead actor, and so that you have different fields for both of those. Stallone's not going up against DiCaprio in this category, who I think is probably the biggest lock of all the locks of the awards. But yeah, I think I actually broke this into 2 categories as well. My personal will win. The person that I think is going to get it is Stallone. I think compared to a lot of the other categories, this one does have a little bit more doubt in my brain. And just like you mentioned, Jim, I think that doubt comes from Mark Rylance from Bridge of Spies, who I think is definitely a dark horse, but I think it is more of a contender than a lot of the other dark horses that we may talk about. So personally, my will win, my prediction is Stallone. But my personal pick would have actually been Mark Rylance, Bridge of Spies. That was my favorite supporting role of the 5 on this list. Brad?
Yeah. You know, for me, it's definitely Sylvester Stallone in this category. I mean, no question. I thought he was so incredibly strong in that role, and it was such a surprise too, because going into that movie, I'm like, oh great, like, you know, coming out of Expendables 12 or whatever, I'm like, you know, Stallone's kind of a joke at this point, a caricature of himself, but I was just so blown away by his performance. I think he was quite amazing. I know we've got our other guy here from Bridge of Spies who might take it. I gotta ask you though, don't you think Mark Ruffalo's like crying Kermit the Frog impression will like move the Academy at all?
He would be another dark horse for me. I really liked his performance in that movie Spotlight. I think, you know, if they were going to battle it out for second place, it would be tough for me to pick between Rylance and Ruffalo here. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't think he's going to overtake the charisma of Stallone in this category, and I think that's going to stand out and ultimately get him. And it's going to be great if he does win. I think it's going to be one of the highlights. I can't wait to see, you know, what he has to say, you know, in his acceptance speech. I think it's going to be a pretty emotional moment. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm personally counting Ruffalo and Bale out of this category. Not because I think they didn't do a good job. I think both were fantastic. But both The Big Short and Spotlight were very much ensemble films. And those types of things tend to, sometimes they'll sneak in with, this is usually the category that something like that might sneak in a win, but I think you've got too much of a story with Stallone, and that's going to weigh very heavily in voters' minds. And I think, again, Rylance was the guy that stood out the most in a Steven Spielberg movie, and so I think that's going to be the thing in his cap. So I really do think it's a showdown between those two, and my personal pick does fall between those two. Like, you know, Rylance is what my heart is saying, but only by a slim margin over Sly. So yeah, so it'll be a good one. I'll be interested in seeing how this one plays out.
We'll see in a few days, I guess. But yeah. Well, now let's talk about the other side of the gender line here. So, Best Actress in a Supporting Role. We've got Jennifer Jason Leigh from The Hateful Eight, Rooney Mara from Carol, of course, Rachel McAdams from Spotlight, Alicia Vikander from The Danish Girl, and Kate Winslet from Steve Jobs. Jim, what's your take in this one?
Man, this category is probably one of the, well, you talked about lock you know, on one hand you have lock categories, which I think there are a couple, and we'll get to some of those later, and then you have the categories that I think are really much more toss-up. This being one of those. I don't know what to say here. First of all, 2 of these movies I haven't seen, believe it or not. Did not see The Hateful Eight yet, and did not see The Danish Girl. So I can't speak to those performances. I know that Jennifer Jason Leigh's having a great year, so that's kind of in her favor, maybe, as one of the favorites in this category. But of these performances, God, I can't. It's hard for me to pick. I think I would go with somebody like Kate Winslet and Steve Jobs, even though her accent in that movie was god-awful, terrible. It would be hard for me to fully buy into her winning with such a fakey accent. I'm sorry, but yeah, this one's a complete toss-up for me. I just don't have a dog in this fight this year.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying, Jim, and I think, again, you know, I haven't seen either of those films either, Hateful Eight or The Danish Girl. I definitely want to see The Danish Girl. Hateful Eight, I don't know if I'm ready for a 4-hour Tarantino slog, but yeah, this one's a hard one. Like, I guess I guess I'm going with Kate Winslet here, just because I felt like she did Bossy Librarian very well. It came across less like she was acting and more like she was being, if that makes sense. The accent was terrible, but there were just times during that movie where she would like walk up to Steve Jobs and just the way she would like touch him on the shoulder, or like a look that she would give him, just these very subtle nuanced things that she would do that really sold me on this relationship, that they've known each other forever, that she can talk to him in a way that other people can't. So it wasn't just that terrible accent. There are a lot of other great things that really stood out for me there. Rooney Mara, I mean, I liked her in Carol. I like her in pretty much anything she does. But, I mean, obviously Kate Blanchett was like the big, lead there. And I just felt like Rooney Mara kind of got swallowed up a little bit by Kate Blanchett in that role. So I don't know. I think it's Kate Winslet for me. How about you, Will?
So this is an interesting category for me. I love all 5 of these performances. Even Jennifer Jason Leigh in The Hateful Eight, which is a movie that I didn't enjoy the movie, but I thought she was quite good in it. Rooney Mara is. I think the one of the problems I have with her in this category is, I mean, there were 2 leads in Carol, and I feel like it was a disservice putting her in this category. I thought she was quite good in Carol, and I have no idea why she ended up here. Rachel McAdams in Spotlight, the same ensemble issue we had before. So it really brings down to 2 people that I think have a shot at this one. Kate Winslet, Steve Jobs, is getting some buzz, and of course, that film isn't up for a whole lot of Oscars. I think it's one of those ones that's fallen out of favor a little bit with the overall voting audience. So for me, the pick that I'm doing both as my heart and my brain pick is Alicia Vikander in The Danish Girl. She was absolutely breathtaking in that movie, and she is absolutely on fire this year. Not only counting this role here, she also had that brilliant role in Ex Machina as Ava. She had roles in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which was kind of it surprised a lot of people just in how much fun they ended up having with it. I think that not only is the body of work from Danish Girl alone worth her getting the win, but I think this is going to be similar to McConaughey a few years ago when he won for
Mud.
Well, no, he won for Wolf of Wall Street, I believe, supporting actor, in the same year that he did Mud, and it was sort of like a body of work nomination, and I'm pretty sure that's what Alicia Vikander's getting. So I feel more comfortable about this one actually than the supporting actor role. So lock me down, Alicia Vikander.
There you go.
Got it.
Consider it locked in.
Tough category.
Locked in.
Tough category.
Tough category.
Indeed.
And this whole thing is fun because I like all of the. I think we're going to get to very few things in this list that I actively dislike. So it's really choosing between, like, which of these amazing things is most amazing. That makes for fun conversation.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like picking your favorite, like, special girl from Hunger Games and the insurgent, resurgent, divergent, whatever the fuck, divergent series. Who's the most special of the specials? Mm-hmm. Find out. But yeah, so let's tackle another category here. Best actor in a leading role this time. Of course, we've got Bryan Cranston from Trumbo, Matt Damon from The Martian, Leo DiCaprio from The Revenant, Michael Fassbender from Steve Jobs, and Eddie Redmayne, also from The Danish Girl. Will, why don't you go first this time? Who's your pick here?
Yeah, so this is, if there is any one lock category for the entire Oscars this year, I think it's this one. This is another one where my heart and my brain were in line. My pick for Best Actor of the Year was Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant. There's been so much buzz about, is this the year that Leo is going to win? And I think that this is going to be one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. And I'm okay with that. I loved what he did in that film. I thought he absolutely took my breath away. That takes absolutely nothing away from the other performances here. Bryan Cranston in Trumbo, Trumbo was a super uneven movie that I had a lot of problems with tonally. Bryan Cranston was not part of those problems. He was like probably the one thing, maybe in a couple of supporting actors, that I enjoyed there. Matt Damon had to eat up a lot of screen time by himself in The Martian, and he did so quite competently. Michael Fassbender really showed us why he's supposed to be kind of in the public eye as a lead actor with what he did as Steve Jobs. And Eddie Redmayne was good in The Danish Girl. I feel like he was overshadowed by Alicia Vikander a bit. But certainly this is a guy who got his win last year for The Theory of Everything. This is a guy who's definitely, we say he's an up-and-comer. I think he's like in his like mid-30s. He's not, I think he looks younger than he actually is, but relatively speaking, he's an up-and-comer. 5 good performances across the board, but this is such a DiCaprio category this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is kind of a slam dunk. I think this is Leo's year to win his award. And again, this is another one of those, my God, when you look at his body of work, it's like, how could he have not won an Oscar up to this point? And the Oscar, the Academy, in a way, in its collective mind, I think, knows that and recognizes that. And based on his kind of in-your-face performance in The Revenant, even though, maybe I didn't like it quite as much as some of his other performances, I think this is where he gets his. I think this is, you're right, Will, I think this is one of those slam dunk categories. Write it down. I mean, to the point where if he doesn't win, it will be a huge news story the next day, like headline news, like, oh my God, Leo did not get his Oscar. What are we gonna do?
Leo retires from acting, walks off stage with middle fingers raised high.
Decides to be Trump's running mate. I don't know, whatever.
Oh my God, that confuses me.
Wow.
Moving on.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I think there's no question with this category. It's going to be Leo DiCaprio. I don't think we're going to be surprised there. I mean, I suppose it's possible that the universe, it could be some weird like Earth 2 like parallel universe Flash thing where, Eddie Redmayne takes it, but I seriously I don't foresee that happening, but I could be surprised. Revenant was not one of those movies that blew me away. We reviewed this on the show several weeks ago, and I was not as big of a fan of all the like grunting and like Daryl from The Walking Dead acting from Leo DiCaprio that we got. But I do think, at least compared to the other performances, as much as I liked Fassbender in Steve Jobs,
but he ate a raw buffalo liver. Come on. That alone gets him an award.
Whatever. Anyway, so compared to Fassbender from Steve Jobs, who I think did a great job, I think that when you look at the technical side of making this film for DiCaprio, that's where some of the like grunting and crap sort of gets made up for me, because what was it, like a year and a half or 11 months or something that he was up there, right?
It was a brutal shoot.
Yeah.
They used only natural light, so it extended the shoot quite a bit because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So months and months and months of being in the cold. I mean, I know he had hot tubs and supermodels like in between scenes to warm him up a little bit, but I would not get in that frigid ass water and catch a fish with my bare hands in one take. I mean, that is phenomenal dedication to your craft. So I definitely support a Leo DiCaprio win here for sure. All right.
Write it down.
Write it down.
Lock it in. This is all three of us agree.
Sort of like a slot machine.
BJW. Ding, 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 ding.
So what about the other side of the gender divide, guys? So Best Actress in a Leading Role, we've got Cate Blanchett from Carol, we mentioned earlier, Brie Larson from Room, Jennifer Lawrence from Joy, Charlotte Rampling, 45 Years, and how do you say Cerise Ronan?
Cersei.
How do you?
Cersei.
Yeah. Cersei. Okay, yeah.
Or Saoirse or something. I don't know.
Well, she was the delightful ginger girl in Brooklyn. How about that?
Yeah.
So what do we think here on this one, Jim? Where are you going?
So this one comes down to I automatically Jennifer Lawrence, although she she did a lot of the heavy lifting in Joy. I just don't think the vehicle was enough to get her over the finish line in that movie, regardless of her performance. And there was nothing wrong with her performance whatsoever. And she's got her share of hardware already too, which is kind of unless your name is Meryl Streep, it becomes a burden after a while. But I'd say this one really comes down to 3 strong performances for me: Brie Larson in Room, Saoirse Ronan in Brooklyn, and Charlotte Rampling in 45 Years. And here's the thing: I love Brie Larson. Love what she did at Short Term 12. She was a throwaway role in Trainwreck this year, if you guys remember. Mm-hmm. But I kind of want her to win because I loved her performance in Room. It just really emotionally kind of wrecked me. But on the other hand, I don't want her to win because she's kind of like the little girl that we all have, we want to see her, I don't know, kind of get these, once you win, you start getting into roles, and maybe that changes things a little bit, at least in my mind. Maybe not concretely, but in a way it kind of changes. I'm going to pick her to win. I think she's going to win. With my second and third kind of dark horses are Saoirse Ronan and Charlotte Rampling.
All right. And Will, you?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like you almost want her, Brie Larson, that is, to kind of pull Leonardo DiCaprio from a super selfish perspective, right?
Yeah.
I don't want her to win an Oscar for the next 15 years so that she can put out an Oscar-worthy performance every year for the next 15 years. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case. She is both my heart and my brain pick for this category. Taking nothing away from the other categories, you're absolutely right. Jennifer Lawrence had a bad vehicle for Joy. Cate Blanchett. Carol peaked. It's one of those ones. Carol peaked really early in the award season and lost its momentum by the time we got to where we're at now. So I think Carol's not going to pull very much. Rampling in 45 Years is both my brain and my heart's dark horse for this one. She's really good in this, but at the same time, I just don't think I don't think people, even other members of the voting academy, saw 45 Years. To be honest, I think a lot of people just I think enough people scrolled past that on the list and just picked Brie Larson and the voting committee. It's great that she was nominated. She's not going to pull the win. And Ronan's fantastic. This is a girl who she's been stellar in several things over the years. Several things that I didn't even realize she was in. She just kind of disappears into roles super well. And I loved her in Brooklyn.
Tough to disappear in this one.
Yeah, she did not disappear in that one, and that's why I think she's appearing on a lot of people's radars for the first time, because she didn't just play a role where she just absorbed herself into the role so well. Like this one, she stood out, and it's like, hey, guess what? I'm a great actress. But yeah, this is Brie Larson's to lose. And I'm super happy for her. She is one of my favorite actresses right now. I'll see anything with her in it. So give the statue to Brie.
Seriously, Ronan, the answer isn't no. It's not yet.
There you go. That should be the Oscars to Saoirse Ronan, right?
Yeah.
This could be one category, real quick, that could be a surprise, though. But go ahead, Brad.
Maybe. For me, I mean, definitely going to echo what you guys have already said. Brie Larson, it's yours. Where I'm going to diverge from you, though, is I don't want it to be 15 years until she gets an award. I don't want her to wait. I think she's the kind of actress that something like this is going to galvanize her. It's going to open her up. She's going to bloom even more than she already has. And she's going to get the kind of confidence I think that she doesn't have yet to tackle some pretty amazing roles and bring us some pretty phenomenal stuff yet to come. So I really want to see her take this away. I want to see this transform her. We actually got to see Brie Larson at a Sundance screening here in Tucson a couple years ago when she was here, and we got to kind of
Spectacular Now.
Yeah, for the Spectacular Now. Yeah. So it was kind of awesome, like hearing her at that Q&A. And one of the things I just remember about her in person is how not confident she seems in her own abilities and her own just sense of self, maybe self-esteem. So I think this could be huge for her. I think this could be really transformative. So I think she's going to take it away, and I can't wait to see what happens as a result of it. So it's another three-peat lock, I guess.
Yeah, wow. I'm looking at the list. I think we've got a category ahead of us where we might disagree a little bit on one aspect of things. So
maybe
we may. Hey, we have a live comment from our friend Sam in Kansas, who says, "I'm looking very cute with my glasses." Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it.
Okay. Brad has a comment from Sam.
Oh! I totally misunderstood. Sam is saying that Brad looks cute with his glasses, not that he himself looks cute with his glasses.
Oh, wouldn't that be a great comment? Just like,
hey, Movie Bears podcast.
I'm
looking cute in my glasses. I mean, he does look cute in glasses, but anyway. Thank you, Sam. I adore you.
Thank you, Sam.
All right. So, next category here, we have animated feature film. And we've got Anomalisa, we've got Boy and the World, we've got Inside Out, we have Shaun the Sheep, and When Marnie Was There. Guys, I'm just going to come out and say it on this one. It is Inside Out all the way for me, no question. This is totally going to sweep it away for me. I know Anomalisa technically, has a lot of great things going for it. For me, that story was kind of a mess. Yeah, I know. We're going to disagree on this one, but Jim, you talk about heart picks, right? I guess this one is definitely a heart pick. It could be where it gets me in trouble. But this movie, I mean, we watched like 5 minutes of it the other day to calibrate like the new TV that we put up. And I just was like ensorcelled by this movie, like raptured. Like Jim's trying to adjust settings, and I'm like, can you turn that fucking menu off so I can watch this movie, please? Like, what are you doing? It just pulls me in so much. So it's possible that my heart is going to get me in trouble for this one. And you know what? If that's the case, I'm okay with that. But I just think the writing is so phenomenal. The visuals are spectacular. The message is incredible. Got a great cast. There's a lot that I think is going on for it. But Will, I'm gonna pass it to you because I sense some disagreement, perhaps.
Only a little bit. This is one where my heart and my brain are going to differ a little bit. First of all, I've got to come out and say that I love both Anomalisa and Inside Out. And on a kind of a smaller note, I also really enjoyed Boy in the World, which was, I think, a very solid film. People should go watch it. I'm going to plug it now because this will be the last time we talk about it in this discussion, I'm sure. In fact, When Marnie Was There is the only one on this list I haven't seen, and I've been like patiently looking for it. It kind of bugs my like OCD-ness that I couldn't see this before this discussion. But the thing is I loved both Anomalisa and Inside Out. Both films ranked in my top 10 of the year. Even though Anomalisa ranked higher in my top 10, the fact that both of them made it to that list means both of them are 5-star perfect movies for William. So when I say that Anomalisa is my heart pick, that means nothing. That is no slight whatsoever against Inside Out. Think of it kind of like if I were to give them a percentage, I'm talking like 51-49. Okay? So I say all of that because Inside Out is the brain pick. Inside Out, I think, is going to trounce this category. So I don't think your heart's actually going to get you in trouble, Brad. I think Inside Out is the winner in this category.
Okay. How about you, Jim?
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, I have to admit, I haven't seen 3 of the picks in this category. Did not see Boy in the World yet. Did not see Shaun the Sheep, and haven't seen When Marnie Was There. So I feel a little bit at a disadvantage, and maybe speaking out of my ass a little bit. But of the 2, Inside Out and Anomalisa, Inside Out is both my heart pick and my brain pick. Anomalisa was great. I mean, I loved the innovation and the just what that film went for, and the artfulness of that film. Story-wise, though, it's not that much, and I think as an art form, I think it looks great, but it all depends what they're going to vote for here. I just can't see a Pixar Disney movie getting ousted by Anomalisa. Maybe if Anomalisa was stronger and it had a big push at the box office, it would have a chance. But I don't see that happening. And to be honest, I mean, Anomalisa is one of those films where, Will, I don't know how many times you saw it. Maybe you saw it more than once, but
only twice.
It's not a film that I would necessarily go back and want to see a second time. Didn't have the emotional punch that Inside Out had. So I'm going to go with Inside Out. I think, Will, I know we talked about lock. I think this is one of the lock categories, actually, other than Best Actor.
I think it is too. Like, the thing is that Pixar, if we weren't even talking about Inside Out, if we weren't even talking about the strength of Inside Out, and you had a Pixar film in this discussion, I think it would already have a leg up over the competition. Just because name recognition. Like I'm sure, going back to a similar thing I said in an earlier category, I don't think people saw The Boy in the World. I think there's a lot of voters who just kind of skimmed past that and were like, okay, and that's just kind of the nature of the voting, and that's maybe a flaw in the process too. But Inside Out, on top of that, was one of, if not Pixar's best film, it's one of their best films. So I think it not only has like the fact that it has the Pixar recognition, but it's actually a good movie too. So yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty close. It's not necessarily a DiCaprio lock, but it's pretty darned up there.
You want to know the other reason it's going to win, guys?
Why is that?
Tripled income will make you smile.
No, send it back.
Oh goodness! All right. Let's move on. So directing. We have Adam McKay for The Big Short. We have George Miller, who we got to see last year at South by Southwest Film, from Mad Max: Fury Road. It was awesome listening to him speak. Alejandro G. Inarritu for The Revenant. Lenny Abramson for Room, and Tom McCarthy, Spotlight. Jim, what's it going to be?
Boy, this is another one that I don't know how it's going to go down. And a lot of times, Best Director and Best Picture are kind of locked together, where you'll have one that wins both, or you'll have maybe one of two, and they split the vote. It's tough to say. To me, I'd love to see, and I'm not gonna talk about my head pick because I don't know which one's gonna win. Obviously, Inarritu won last year, right, for Birdman. So I think that kind of goes against maybe his chances here. Puts him kind of down the list a little bit, not a lot. Whereas maybe in any other year, the director of a movie like The Revenant might win. But I don't know. I kind of have to go with my heart pick of George Miller here. I think it's going to be another one of those kind of like Sylvester Stallone situations where the guy's been around making films that not necessarily got the attention of the Academy, but this film did. And what he did with this film, the making of this film, the tales behind the making of this film are probably just as good or just as harrowing as the tales behind the making of The Revenant. One was done in the cold and one was done in the desert, which is kind of interesting. But I'm going to go with George Miller in this category. Nothing against the other ones, the other directors. I just think it's going to be time for them to recognize George Miller. That's my thought.
So Jim says it's Miller time.
Mm-hmm. Miller's time.
How about you, Will?
So up until now, all of the ones that I've picked as my brain pick, I actually feel very comfortable with. Like, I'm not saying that every single one of them will 100% definitively win, but just kind of based on the atmosphere, based on a lot of the things, I felt really comfortable with all of the picks we've talked about. This is the first one where I feel like it's going to come down to a coin flip between two particular people, and it's exactly what you just mentioned, Jim. I think the two people in this category are Inarritu for The Revenant and Miller for Mad Max Fury Road. Again, taking absolutely nothing away from anyone else. I don't think that the direction, air quotes, very transparent, was as in your face in spotlight or room, which is why I think McCarthy and Abrahamson are probably out of this category. And Adam McKay for The Big Short could actually be a dark horse here. What he did with that movie was nothing short of stellar. But the conversation is Inarritu versus Miller. My brain is actually saying Inarritu because I think this is going to be a year where you're going to see a lot of the higher level, above the line awards going to The Revenant, and a lot of the below the line technical awards going to Mad Max. I think that's the way both films are going to get their statues. So lock me in for my brain pick as Inarritu on this one. That said, if I was the Oscars, I would 100% give this one to Miller because I think the direction that he gave to that film was nothing short of amazing. I think that I was going to say single-handedly, and that's kind of a dick thing to say, but he definitely strong-armed that film into the greatness that it is. Yeah, brain pick Inarritu, but my heart really wants to see Miller take it.
Okay, Brad. So, break the tie.
Am I the great decider?
Just decide.
All right. Yeah, so for me, I totally would love for George Miller to walk away with the Oscar this year. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the dominoes are falling The Revenant's way, and I think Inarritu is going to walk away with it here. And it's unfortunate because, George Miller, while he's been doing other films, I feel like this is such a phenomenal, entry in his body of work. It's been so long in coming, and there's just so many reasons. I could probably talk about them for an hour on why he should get this award, but I just feel like this is one of those situations where a couple of things happen with the Academy, right? One, they love period pieces. And while Mad Max technically takes place in a period, and sometime in the future or whatever, they like the old-timey, smarmy-marmy past more than they do, post-apocalyptic future.
Historical.
And then the other thing is they like people who play, affectations, right? And in this case, Leo, being so mauled by the bear that he's dragging and grunting and blah 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 blah. He definitely has a lot of that sort of affectation to him as he's dealing with his injuries and stuff. So, I really think, guys, it's going to go to Inarritu for The Revenant here. I would love for it to go to George Miller, but I'll be really shocked if that's the case.
Yeah, and I won't be disappointed if it goes to Inarritu. I think when you think about direction. There's a lot of things that fall under direction, probably most predominantly what type of performances you get out of your actor, but you also kind of pull a lot of the general aesthetic, the general feel, any of the cool trick shots, even though a lot of that's really more the cinematographer's job. A lot of that also gets attributed to the director.
Yep, absolutely.
And so do the performances sometimes. So
and that's right.
In this case,
yeah. A lot of the things that are not the actual production, which we'll get into with our next category, all fall into that. And if I were to say what are my absolute two favorite pieces of directorial work this year, it was The Revenant and Mad Max. Not that those were my two favorite movies, but those were my two favorite pieces of direction this year. So I'm not going to be disappointed when Inarritu wins, but I would love to see Miller take it.
Yeah, and there is a good chance that, if, assuming Leo DiCaprio wins Best Actor, just being associated with, that could be the start of the avalanche for The Revenant.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, we'll see. But this is one where I'm going to have to struggle to not put down my heart pick of George Miller.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think of all the different categories, this is probably the one where I feel like if there's an upset, I think this is the category, Jim. I think this is the one where you could probably do that. This is much more all over the place than other categories.
Especially if in our next category things go the way I think they're going to go. They could do that split thing, but we'll get into that.
We're there.
Speaking of our next category, let's motherfucking do it. So last category we're going to talk about, of course, is the one they always save for last during the Oscars, and of course that's Best Picture. So nominees are The Big Short, Bridge of Spies, Brooklyn, Mad Max Fury Road, The Martian, The Revenant, Room, and Spotlight. So, Will, let's start with you on this one. What's it going to be?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm a little disappointed that we only have 8 nominees this year, which I know is up from like the 5 that we used to have. But this is a category that allows up to 10, and in a year where we've talked about representation and things like that, it would have been very easy to extend this to 10 and maybe see kind of what shakes in there. I think we probably see Straight Outta Compton, maybe Creed as contenders for that 9 and 10 slot.
Absolutely.
So
I think Creed definitely. I'm not sure Straight Outta Compton.
I'm not from a quality perspective necessarily. Right. I think both of those films don't fall in the top 10 for me personally, but I think kind of general zeitgeist, I think they're in the discussion in that 9th and 10th spot from a voter's perspective. And by limiting it to 1 through 8, you eliminate that possibility. So that was problematic for me. But all of that aside, when we really look at this, the reason you extend to this many nominees is so that you can recognize a lot of films that aren't going to win Best Picture, right? Like, there's only a few films here that actually have a shot. Like, I'm sorry, Bridge of Spies. Sorry, Spiele. Sorry, Brooklyn. You guys don't stand a chance. Room, I love you. You're a fantastic movie. You're not getting Best Picture.
Right.
I think that this... For a while, this was kind of like I've started to see kind of films fall out of the running on this one. Like The Martian, I think, kind of ran hot for a bit, but it's fallen out. I think Spotlight has lost a little bit of its steam, and I think it's out. Maybe I'll be surprised there. And The Big Short as well, despite a... what did he get? Did he get Producers Guild? I think he got Producers Guild, which is usually a good sign. I think it's fallen out too. This is the same discussion as what we just had for Best Director. This is Mad Max versus The Revenant. And I'm personally going to say Mad Max Fury Road was my absolute favorite movie of last year. And that may surprise people because I usually do tend towards a certain aesthetic, but this film like absolutely did everything pitch perfect. I think that's the film that absolutely should win. But I'm not going to be disappointed when The Revenant ultimately does win because that's my brain pick on this one. Revenant was my number 4 movie of the year, so if I'm debating between my number 1 and my number 4 movie, which one gets the statue, William's not disappointed. So brain pick The Revenant, heart pick Mad Max.
All right, Jim, how do you stack up?
I echo pretty much everything what you said about the films that kind of dropped out, kind of the second-tier films here. But I think this, like I said, could be one of the situations where they might give the director to a George Miller and then give movie to Revenant in this category. And that's kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen. I actually think, though, I just don't see the Academy giving Best Picture to Mad Max Fury Road. I just don't know if I could see that happening. You know, they typically don't go for these kind of like over-the-top action, you know, action-adventure, you know, sci-fi kind of movies for Best Picture. But you never know. I think my second place choice was going to be The Big Short. But I don't know the way things are running at the moment. I'm still going to go with The Revenant for Best Picture, and then George Miller for Best Director.
But The Big Short really could do it, right?
Oh, I think so. I think it has all the elements, right? It's one of those ensemble pieces. It's got snappy writing, great acting. It's got everything that they want, you know. And it's kind of a historical. It's kind of a period piece, yeah. Recent history, but and it's an important picture, right? It talks about something that really happened in history. So it's got all the pieces. It's a dark horse, though, I think.
Yeah, as much as it hurts my heart, I have to go with The Revenant here, and I'm really thinking it's the dominoes falling, right? Up to this point, this will be the last one, and it's going to be The Revenant. And you know, as much as I loved Mad Max Fury Road, and I fucking loved it. Excuse my language, but that's how much I enjoyed that movie for so many reasons. I don't think that the Academy is going to hand it. I could totally be surprised, and I would love to be wrong. I really would. But again, I mentioned this in directing because obviously the director is such an integral part of getting the performances out and helping to kind of craft the look and feel. But I think when you take all of these elements that are sort of up in the air, right? What makes the best picture? I think in their eyes, they all sort of fall into line here for The Revenant. I loved Fury Road. I think I would probably give it to Fury Road if it was me. Or maybe Room. I really loved Room a lot as well. But I think this one's pretty much a lock here. But I would love to be wrong. Make me wrong. Please.
One thing that may make us wrong is I'm setting our Wayback Machine right now to 2004 when we had The Return of the King, the third of the Lord of the Rings movies. And as you're sitting through that award ceremony, you've got all of the technical awards are going to it. And that's not surprising. Like, I think we're going to be sitting through here. If you look at my ballot right now, I filled out my entire 24 category ballot. There's so much Mad Max in those below the line categories. So I think that's going to happen. That's something we're going to see. In 2004, then, what ended up happening was a lot of the above the line awards started to go to Lord of the Rings as well, including Best Picture and Best Director, adapted screenplay, which is another kind of like on the line award. So Mad Max, the Academy it's not impossible for the Academy to give a popular film Best Picture, kind of let it sweep. It just has to be the right popular film at the right time. Mm-hmm. And maybe Mad Max is it. It does have a really strong critical following. I still ended up, I guess, hedging my bet and doing more of The Revenant above the line, but I think if any year like a blockbuster crowd pleaser could kind of sweep the top, I think it could be Mad Max. So I think maybe, Brad, maybe kind of your heart isn't going to be... There's a possibility, more than just kind of a distant one, that your heart won't be sinking come Sunday.
Maybe so. I don't know. We'll see. But that pretty much brings us to the end of our categories. I know we had a couple others that we might have touched on if we still had some time, but we still have a whole movie to talk about.
Let me guess. We talked too long, right?
We did. We allotted 45 minutes, and it's been an hour. So unless you want to skip talking about The Witch,
no.
Do a couple more categories. I have to be the evil presence, and
I don't want to piss off the witch at this point, if you know what I mean.
Right?
Brad, Sanjay Super Team?
Yes! Oh my god! Yes, totally. I'm there. We'll see, but that would be amazing. But yeah, so that's kind of how we fall when it comes to the Oscars. We'll see how correct or not we are come Sunday. But either way, I just want to say I love, Jim, you mentioned it's like the gay Super Bowl. I don't know if I agree with that totally, but I just love, again, that we have a year where there's so many great films and performances and looks and feels and all kinds of stuff that we can sit down and talk for a freaking hour about these things. I think it's amazing. So yeah, good stuff.
Some amazing films, some amazing performances this year, and we're just excited to kind of see the cap put on it in 2016, which we already have actually. But
yeah,
right.
Yeah, well, I mean, but we're in 2016, but the films that we're going to be talking about this time next year haven't hit theaters yet. Like,
right.
That we're actually, it's we usually talk about the dregs. We're kind of in the dregs, but there's been some kind of decent movies this time of year this year, which has been kind of nice. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to talk about these films. It's going to be nice to put a ribbon on them, put a bow on them, and look ahead to what's to come.
Put a bird on it, and then send it away. All right. Well, guys, we are going to do an abbreviated review of The Witch. Typically, we do a non-spoiler section for about 20 minutes, and then we do a spoiler section for 20 minutes. But I think we'll probably just do a non-spoiler discussion. It's kind of what we talked about, right, guys? Are we bought into that?
Sure. Yeah, especially because, I mean, we usually do like a main review and a mini review, and the mini review is usually news or whatever, but we needed to spend more time on the Oscars, and as we're going to talk about with The Witch, I actually don't want to do spoilers for The Witch. Like, I want people to experience the twists and turns in that themselves.
Okay. Okay. I kind of wanted to talk the ending a little bit, but
maybe we can do like a small coda.
Maybe we'll see. Let's see how we feel when we get there, and then we'll maybe make that decision. But for now, we're going to start off with non-spoilers, and if we do any kind of spoiler, we'll give you a warning. But here we go. Our discussion of The Witch. All right, so this film has been getting a lot of buzz. There has been a lot of discussion, directed by Robert Eggers, written by Robert Eggers. It's Eggers, right? It's two G's.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Eggers? I think it's Eggers.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's getting a lot of discussion. Like, when we were kind of like, man, what movie are we going to review? And we were like, well, we could talk about The Witch, having not seen it yet. Kind of like, horror movie. I don't really know that there's going to be much discussion, but I've actually been kind of surprised. It's definitely a period piece. Takes place back in colonial America. A pilgrim-esque family is basically, they're banished, and they go to start their own farm. And Craig Puckett says, "Do spoilers." Craig, okay,
hey, Craig.
We may have to. Hey, thanks for listening. But yeah, so basically they start their own farm way away from the colony, and all of a sudden weird supernatural shit starts happening. And I don't want to go too deeply into it, but suffice to say, there is a good versus evil, God versus the devil component to this that is kind of fascinating. In terms of whether I think you should see this movie or not, definitely think. I definitely think. What? You're making faces, Jim.
No, you tell us what you think.
Yeah.
Because I'm on board, but yeah.
I definitely think it's worth seeing and making your own opinion. One thing I will say is I've seen people on Facebook, just like with Jem, they're like, oh, I'm not going to see that movie because it's not my idea of what a witch is. And I'm kind of like, what?
I'm glad I haven't seen that yet. Because
what? Yeah.
I would have to type a furious response.
Yeah, it's
furious response.
So this friend, I love you. I don't think you're listening because you don't listen to podcasts, but this friend is very much of the witches are from Hocus Pocus camp, and not like witches were actually like
witches
a thing.
Of Eastwick. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right, exactly. So he was like, well, if it's not fucking like Disney witches, I don't want to watch it.
Wow.
So I'm just kind of like, well, all right. But anyway, I think this offers a fascinating take at a unfortunate time in our history, worth checking out for sure. I think maybe who's next in the order? Go with Jim. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Man, this, even with a couple of issues I had with this movie, I love this movie. It felt refreshingly different to me for a horror movie. And as far as recommending it, I would have to shy away, actually, from recommending it to certain people, unless I knew they were people who just loved watching movies and film and were open to the different ideas and approaches that this film took. Because if they're the person that's looking for a horror movie, a Hollywood horror movie, I can totally see people walking away from this movie being very disappointed, maybe even walking out of this movie at some point, which I've also heard about. If you go into this with the mindset of getting the cookie cutter Hollywood horror movie with the jump scare a minute and the goriness, blah 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 blah, I think you may end up disappointed. This is a really I don't know how to say it, just a creepy movie. Lucky for me, I'm not like prone to nightmares like some people are, but this movie had some scenes that were so creepy and unsettling. I could totally see how this movie could lead to nightmares. Halfway through this movie, there's this feeling of dread that comes over you. Like there's this family that is kind of homesteading in they're off the plantation, kind of in the middle of the woods in a clearing, trying to make a living, and things are just going bad. And you can see the evil that hangs over this family, and certain things start to happen. I love the period detail in here. We'll talk about the dialogue authenticity, because I think that might be another thing that drives some people away from this movie, even though it didn't bother me all that much. There were some scenes, and I'm not going to give anything away, where I actually could not make out what they were saying specifically. And there's a lot of things like, they speak in that old English puritanical language, like, "Are ye repentant for thou sins?" But that's fine, because Shakespeare has written a lot like that stuff too. However, now you put on accents on top of that.
And like mumbling.
A British accent and some kind of like mumbling or kind of whispering or very quiet talking. It became very hard in spots. It took me probably 20 minutes to get into this movie and figure out. There are some scenes where I still don't know what they said to this day about a certain object. And, we probably won't talk about that. But, yeah, but that language also, to me, kind of helped immerse me in the movie. I really like this movie. But recommending it, I can see my hesitation is going to be recommending it to people who maybe aren't looking for something a little bit out of the ordinary. But I personally love this movie, and with the exception of the ending, which I will not talk about and I will not spoil, the ending was a letdown for me. Not necessarily what the ending was, but kind of how it was portrayed. Just didn't click with me. So maybe we can talk about that offline. This is a tone movie. It reminded me a little bit. You know what it reminded me of? Remember Under the Skin from a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Kind of that feeling of dread you got like throughout the whole movie. Like, what the hell's going on here? And I loved it. Will, what'd you think?
First of all, I've got to say I'm remarkably surprised. I was having a conversation with a friend who'd kind of listened to some of the episodes. He's like, "I don't think Brad and Jim are going to like it. I think you're going to have to really fight on this one." I was like, okay, I guess I'll be ready for it. And so I'm really happy that it sounds like we all three like it. Like, we're all kind of that's cool. I love that you guys like this film, because I love this movie. I will say that it's very possible in the course, disclaimer, over the course of this next discussion, that I get a detail or two wrong. I watched this at a festival back in October, and I'm going to see it again tomorrow night. So I'm going off of like 5-month-old memories on this one.
Okay.
So if I botch a detail, please forgive me. That said, what I love so much about this movie is that it is a very moody piece. It is a very dark piece. Like, Jim, you mentioned that sense of dread, that sense of like overbearing, like foreboding that just swallows you whole from the opening scene of this movie all the way through it. Like, there isn't like a moment where it's just like, oh, we're going to lightly introduce the characters and then things are going to go sour. It's like, no, this thing is dark all the way through. I loved a lot of the detail in this film, from the fact that it was a period piece, to the language that was made, that was used, to the lens, to the filters that were used on the every scene. Like, had this like sort of slightly tinged hue to it, which added to that sense of foreboding. There were several sequences where the characters, they're in this isn't a spoiler, the whole film takes place at their little homestead that's up against this wooded area. And there are several shots where the characters are dwarfed by the tree line behind them. And it just adds a little bit more to that sense of fear, to that sense of terror, that sense of the unknown that's just surrounding and overwhelming these characters. I loved the performances. There's something really solid about what they got out of the kid actors. I mean, the lead here is a young actress named Anya Taylor-Joy. Like, She is, how old is she? I'm looking this up right now. When's your birthday? Come on, I'm stalking you on IMDb. I can't tell right away. But a fairly youngish actress who doesn't have a whole lot of things under her belt, and she carries a very complex and complicated role very adequately. This is a hard film to recommend to everyone because
she's 19, Will.
She's 19?
Mm-hmm. And probably younger when this was
shot. Probably younger when it was shot, but even, so, it's a little older than I was expecting, but still, quite a good performance. This is hard to recommend to everyone. I loved this movie. It's one of my favorite things I've seen this year, and granted, we're fairly early into the year. But I think the horror landscape has changed a lot, and people, we talk about expectation management a lot, and we usually talk about it in terms of ourselves quite a bit when we go to films. I think this is going to be one that audiences are going to have an expectation issue with. We live in an era of Blumhouse where we have films like Sinister or The Conjuring or Insidious that have a very specific horror aesthetic that is kind of what people go out and see. This is why movies like Ouija are really successful, because we want to see kind of like we don't want to be afraid of what's like lurking in the distance. We want that thing to be in our faces and jump scares, right? Yeah, we want those jump scares. We want to be like collectively, we want to have that exhilaration, that deep breath, and then move on to the next scare. This is not that movie. This is more than anything, this feels like a throwback to classic horror. If I were to throw this next to anything, I feel tonally, this movie reminds me a lot of like The Exorcist. This movie reminds me a lot of Amityville Horror, those movies that are all about like an hour long of build, and then shit goes down. That's what you're going to get kind of with The Witch. Like, there is a lot that you have to kind of experience and build up through. If you're the type of person that loves those movies and grew up on those movies and is still affected by this movie, absolutely go see this. If you're the type of person who can't sit through 10 minutes of a horror movie without a jump scare, without being bored, skip it. This probably isn't for you.
Yeah, I think, Will, this brought to mind to me another movie that we've seen, but I don't think has been wide released yet, is The Invitation, which is coming up. Kind of like that slow build, that sense of, hey, something's really fucked up here, and bad shit could go down at any time, and you just don't know what's going to happen. This movie gave me that feeling all the way through, and you're right. I think the actress here was fantastic. I thought all the acting was fantastic. It's got two actors from Game of Thrones, right? The dad and the mother, right? The mother plays Lady Aaron. Is that her name? I forget what her name is, but yeah. I mean, I just thought the performance, even the little kids, which in this movie, the little boy, the actresses, the characters, Thomason's brother, Caleb, I thought was fantastic as well. Again, I love these kid performances that aren't like pretentious and in your face. These were like authentic kids that that I would expect that you would see in a pioneer family, out there in the woods, doing stuff. This movie has a really strong. It has something to say. I'm not sure I figured out what it is, but it has something to say about religion and God versus evil, and being devout to the Word of God and holding on to that in the face of things that you don't understand, and trying to kind of fit them into your belief system. Like the dad in this movie, I think he represents that, and I like that aspect of it as well. Just a great movie. This is one that I would definitely maybe sometime down the road see on video on demand or on DVD.
Yeah.
And Jim, you mentioned the kid performances. I don't want to spoil, but there's a certain point in the movie where something happens with Caleb, right? And it's sort of a big sort of thing, and I realize I'm kind of dancing around it. I'm thinking you guys probably know what I'm talking about. I was just blown away by that kid. Like, I'm just thinking to myself, like, how is this a child actor giving this performance? And Craig Puckett commented again. He said, quotes, that scene with the brother, oh my God, frightening. Totally, Craig. I mean, totally right there in alignment with you. I think he did a phenomenal job there.
Yeah, and this was one, that scene came up, and again, I'm tap dancing here. That scene came up in the Q&A that I was a part of. Since I saw it at a festival, Eggers came out, and someone immediately asked about that film, like that scene. How did he get that performance? And if I'm using vague allusions, there's something that kid does in that particular scene that seems extraordinarily adult. And that's because the director gave him the direction, having him do all of these things from a very adult perspective without telling him what the context of that was. So we'll talk maybe offline about what that was, but it really does, like, it comes down to the direction there. The director knew what he wanted to get out of that and knew that the kid did not have the life experiences to mimic that, so he coached him through what to do there. And that's why that scene is so frightening, is because it's so uncomfortable.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, guys, gosh, we are doing a massive show right now, but do you want to do any spoilers, or are we comfortable just putting a cap on it here?
Depends what we have time for. I mean, there's nothing in particular that we have to talk about. I've already mentioned that, like, the end didn't sit very well with me. I just wish they had chosen something different. But I don't really think we need to get into that in specifics. We haven't even brought up we haven't even brought up one of the other main characters in the movie that wasn't human. And
I think it's smart to do that without spoiling.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we will live life more deliciously if we just kind of move past that.
Yes.
All right. I agree. All right. Let's move.
Desire.
Let's move into some plugs. Will, what have you got?
So I've talked about this on the show. I'm doing 45 days, 45 Oscar films, and let me tell you, I am so happy that the Oscars are right around the corner, because it has been, like, I look on Amazon every day, just like, have I seen that one? I have to go look and see, has this one won an award? Nope, I can't watch that movie yet because it did. So I'm ready to get back to regular viewing habits on the other side of this little self-imposed challenge. But one of them that, like, very happily fell in my lap today that I want to talk to people about is this movie called Thebe, Theeb. Now, this movie I've been kind of eyeing for a while. It's up for Best Foreign Language Film. And unfortunately, it's not been accessible to me, and that bugs me when a movie is on a list and I don't have access to it. Well, it just hit Amazon Instant Video, I believe, this last week, and I watched it today. It's quite good. It's this movie. It's set in 1917. It's in the Ottoman province of Hijaz during World War I, and you've got this young boy and his older brother who are they're Bedouin boys. They kind of live out in the desert, and they're tasked to guide this British officer to this special location. And then when tragedy befalls them, the younger boy has to kind of make some unsteady alliances. Jim, you and I on this show sometimes talk about, like, precocious children, right? Like, I know that's been what, I think going all the way back to, like, Mud, and, like, when we talked about that on this show, like, that's been a common theme in things that you look for in child actors. This has been a good year for child actors, I would say. Yeah. Between Tremblay in Room, between the kid and I forget his name from Beasts of No Nation. We've had some really solid performances, and I would add the lead to this. To that list as well. This kid carries a lot of emotional weight, and he does so without any precociousness. He does so without any, like, sense of like not knowing what he is. This kid carries this movie, and on top of everything else, when they went to make this movie, it's a Jordanian movie. They got Bedouin, like, actors. They got people from the region to perform in the movie. So this kid, before starring in this Oscar-nominated movie, had never done a film of any type, like no commercials, no, like, short film. Like, this is his first acting credit, and it is quite good. So the movie is called Theeb, Theeb. It is really good. It's one of those movies that kind of lingers with you afterwards. First Jordanian movie ever nominated for an Oscar, so it's got that as well. And it's on Amazon Instant Video. You can rent it right now, so I strongly recommend you do so.
Awesome. All right. Well, for me this week, this is kind of polarizing people right now. The trailer for the new Pete's Dragon live-action remake is out, and some people really love it. Some people are like, "Oh my God, I hate it. That's not my Pete's Dragon." So, have you guys seen this trailer yet?
I have, yes.
You have?
I watched
Okay.
it today. I kind of thinking that it might come up at some point.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know. This looks like it could be really interesting. I adore the original film. It holds a very cherished place, in the halls of my childhood wonder movies. But I'm really interested to see what they do with it. I think some of the flack that it's getting online, again, Gem and the Holograms level, like, well, I won't see that because A, B, C, D, E. I don't know that that's fair necessarily. I'm kind of excited that a whole new generation of kids are going to be introduced to Pete's Dragon. But that said, you could try and do that with the old movie, but it's so old and smarmy-marmy that I think kids today wouldn't really jive there. So I'm kind of excited to see what comes. What about you guys?
Go for it, Jim. Go first.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the trailer. The trailer it's just a teaser, so you don't get to see a lot. But you get a little bit of sense of a flavor of the movie. I have to admit, I'm one that has to go back and watch Pete's Dragon. I think as a kid I might have seen it, but I've totally forgotten most of it. I actually downloaded it last night on my iPad and started watching before I fell asleep. So I want to finish it, the old one. But this one looks totally different, obviously. It doesn't look like it's got any musical numbers in it, but I don't know. It's all live action with obviously a CGI Elliot, I guess, dragon. But I'm kind of excited for it. I want to see how they handle it. It almost looks like a story that is kind of like Puff the Magic Dragon instead of Pete's Dragon. So I don't know if there's going to be some story mashup here. It's going to be very interesting to see which way they go with it. But I think you're right, Brad. I think remaking the same story with a lot of those story beats, I just don't think maybe would fly with today's audiences, mainstream audiences. So just like they're doing with Jungle Book, this live-action movie. This movie reminds me a lot. This remake of Pete's Dragon reminds me a lot of what they're doing with a Jungle Book. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to read a comment here. We've got from Steven, who's listening in with us. Hey, Steven. He says, I'm so over remakes ruining good movies. And yeah, I think that's been part of the conversation that's been happening about this trailer right now. Because compared to a lot of remakes, there's two ways you can go with a remake, right? You can be extremely faithful or you can be extremely divergent. And I think both paths have their fans, right? And we've talked on the show. I think in a lot of ways I'm a little over remakes too. It's just kind of like, give me some original properties, what have you. I watched this trailer and I feel like I don't have enough information yet from this trailer to make up my mind. And the reason for that is when I think about Pete's Dragon, the thing that I think of most is the amount of personality that is in the dragon itself, right? Like, that is the thing that, like, I don't remember a lot of it. I watched it a bunch when I was a kid, but when I think back on it, like, I don't remember a lot of the individual moments as much as I remember just, like, the feeling of the character, right? Does that make sense?
Totally.
And so in the trailer, we don't see much of the dragon. We get teased with the dragon. So depending on what the dragon is like, if the dragon feels like it captures the core of what made me fall in love with that as a kid, then I'm on board. If it steers away from it because it wants to do its own thing to the point of sacrificing what worked in the past, to the point of not understanding its core, then I'm going to have a problem with it come review time. So I don't have enough information yet to make a good judgment on this. I want to like it. I go into every movie wanting to like it, but I just don't have enough information at this point.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. We'll have to wait and see on this one.
Indeed.
But on the other hand, I mean, as far as remakes, I mean, they never really ruin movies because those original movies are still around. You can still go back and watch those movies. They may not match the quality of the original movies, but just go back to the original. Watch that.
I can always watch Poltergeist and not have to watch Poltergeist.
That's right. That's right.
True. That's true. All right. Well, Jim, what is your plug this week?
Well, I'm not going to necessarily plug much. I will plug a movie called Grandma that I watched. It's a Lily Tomlin movie. Also co-stars Marcia Gay Harden, who we like. This is an interesting movie. I just kind of watched it on a whim. It's about Lily Tomlin is the grandma to a daughter who's pregnant and needs her grandmother's help because her mother isn't helping her, has turned her out. This is kind of it's a relationship movie, a family relationship movie, and it's quite good. Lily Tomlin is an actress that we just really can't get enough of these days. But yeah, I think Grandma is worth a watch. It's available now on the VOD outlets. So it's got, like I said, it's got really good performances. It's got a great little short supporting performances from Sam Elliott. You gotta love that guy just for his voice alone. To see him in a movie. But yeah, it's called Grandma. Get out and watch it. I also watched another movie this weekend called Big Game. I don't recommend anybody go see that. It's a movie with Samuel L. Jackson, and it's set in Iceland, and he's the president. Samuel L. Jackson is the president of the United States. He gets shot down, and a boy on a hunting trip to prove his manhood has to save the president of the United States. Man, I thought this movie would be kind of like a little gem that might be pretty good. It's pretty bad, so don't go see that.
I vaguely remember when that movie came out, and I remember absolutely no one talking about it. Like, those movies that just kind of come and go without making a blip whatsoever? This was totally one of them. So thanks for the anti-recommend.
It's like a step below like White House Down and those movies.
Okay, yeah. If at any point this was ever going to work its way on its list, actually right now I've been watching so many Oscar movies. I feel like my barometer sometimes gets a little confused this time of year. Maybe I need to go track this one down just to kind of reset things.
There you go. That would be a good one to reset.
There you go.
Movie.
So Jim, your plug was actually a really good one for me, so I appreciate it.
Okay.
That or see Gods of Egypt this weekend. I'm sure it will have the same effect.
Probably.
We don't know yet.
The White Gods of Egypt.
I have high hopes of entertaining me. That
All right. Well, guys, that wraps us for this week. Those of you who are hanging out with us live this go-round, we appreciate you guys being there with us. Sam and Steve, thank you for your comments. And Craig, thank you as well. Love hanging out with you guys. For those of you who are listening on digital tape delay, we'd love to hear from you too. So feel free to send us an email at cast@moviebearspodcast.com or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. You can do that. On Facebook, just search for Movie Bears Podcast. On Twitter, it's @MB Podcast. And, of course, you can catch up with all of our episodes through iTunes or Stitcher Radio or even on our website, moviebearspodcast.com. We will see you all next time. And, again, just a reminder, we're getting ever closer to 3,000 likes on Facebook. If you are our 3,000th like, you are going to get a Fandango gift card. So, if you were the lucky winner, we'll let you know.
You will forever be a number.
You
might be a number to us, but you're an important number to us.
You'll be more than a number. You'll be a milestone for us. We'll put your face on our page. We did that in the past, like a little banner and stuff like that. We appreciate it. Yeah, it's fun for us.
It's not just a number. We totally celebrate.
You are not just a knot.
I keyed.
And then the last thing I want to say, guys, is if you enjoy our video content on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel so that you get the show automatically. And if you enjoy us through iTunes, make sure and subscribe there. Leave us a comment. We would love to hear your thoughts. In any event, take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.